Hello everybody, my name is Zeke. Welcome to my channel. Today's video, I'm going to be starting a new reading vlog, and the special thing about this reading vlog is that instead of kind of doing what I usually do and beforehand planning out like 2 or 3 books that I want to read and then just going through those, I'm just going to kind of not plan ahead at all. And I do have the first book I'm going to read planned out, but after that I'm not really thinking ahead at all. I'm just going to finish that book and then look for another book then and not really think too much about it and just read based on my mood moment to moment rather than taking time to plan something out and then having to stick to that regimen. So this should be, we'll see how it goes. I feel like before like this summer, this is what I usually do, but I usually have some idea. Like I don't usually have an extensive TBR where I'm like, this month I'm gonna read these 10 books or whatever, but usually I'll think like, oh, these are the next 2 or 3 books I'm gonna read. But really I'm just gonna go one by one this week and see how that goes. So that's gonna mean a lot of checking out from the library and just getting stuff based on what's available at the library, because that's very easy. The first book I'm gonna be reading, I'm very excited for, and this is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. Not a very summer book, but so it goes. And this is kind of a Gothic classic, I'd say. I don't know really much about it other than it's very creepy. It's about like this family where things are a little off, things are going wrong maybe. I think there's like a new person who's come into their house and that might be creating some sort of conflict, I would assume. And just really excited to read this because personally I feel like I read things adjacent to this sort of genre, but I never really read like gothic, creepy, unsettling things. I read more like just like weirder books sometimes, but I never really go into like gothic or actual like bordering on horror stuff. And I feel like I want to kind of stretch into that, and this will be a great starting point because it's very well beloved by many people. So I think it's pretty short. Don't quote me on that, I have no idea actually. If it's short, I'll just kind of maybe check in once and then check in at the end. If it's longer or if I just have a lot to say, I'll check in a few times, who knows. But I'm gonna start reading that soon, and I will check in with you when I have something interesting to say and something interesting to contribute to your life. So I will see you then. Okay, I just read only the first chapter of We Have Always Lived in the Castle, and I just thought I'd give a little update because now I know a little more about what the book's actually about. It's pretty short, it's only 150 pages, so I probably won't give a lot of updates just because there's not going to be a lot to say because it's 150 pages. But so far, we're basically following this girl. She's part of the Blackwood family. They're kind of outcasts from this village where the village itself is very depressing, but they also all seem to hate her and the remaining members of her family. There's like allusions to some terrible events that may have happened in the past with their family, as like the only people who are really left are her sister, and her uncle, and they all live in a very nice house kind of on the outskirts of the village. There's some other old families with some nicer houses in the village as well, but the village itself is very run down, and they've always been told that the villagers are kind of mean-spirited, and they are very mean to her. And this whole first chapter was basically just like her going on a shopping trip. Her name is Mary, I think. Don't quote me on that. I'm terrible with names when I'm reading books. I just cannot remember. It's really bad. But we have our main character, and then we have her sister Constance, and she's just going on this kind of adventure into the village to go shopping, which she does like once a week. And that was kind of just used to give exposition on a little exposition. We really don't know what's going on exactly, but give some background information and kind of introduce the village and the family to us. So far the writing is a little dry, but I'm kind of warming up to it. It was a little dense at first, not because like the actual writing is dense, but just because like you're just kind of thrust into it. There's no like introduction or whatever. And so it kind of took a second to get used to. but it's interesting enough so far. I'm excited to kind of learn more, and you definitely feel like that dark and gloomy feeling, especially with the narration style of the main character so far. It is in first person, and I think that's really suiting the atmosphere that's being built so far. So I'm going to read a bit more, and I will update you then, and I will share some more thoughts. Okay, I actually finished the book, so I definitely did not do a great job of necessarily updating throughout, but I think that's okay because I don't know if I necessarily would have had anything new to say now versus if I had updated sometimes while reading the book. But I ended up really enjoying it. It's a very kind of strange experience to read. There's not really a lot going on necessarily, except for like one major kind of climax that leads towards the end of the book. And it's really just about observing these two characters, these two sisters, in their lives and also with their uncle, and kind of not necessarily uncovering what happened with the family, but kind of examining how that has affected everyone involved. And yes, it's a story about how these girls are persecuted by the village. And yes, that's an important part, but it's also about kind of their psychosis and their paranoia and how they've kind of been impacted by this trauma, and also how their uncle has kind of reacted to it, and how it's all kind of related and connected and led to things being the way they are. And it has a lot of creepy undertones. I feel like atmospherically it's unsettling. It's kind of very oppressive in nature. You're really confined to this house for the majority of the book. After like that first chapter, I don't think we really leave it at all. Also, the coming of this cousin kind of disrupts the order of things, and like that's another thing that's important in this book, and kind of seeing how the characters react to that. We also have, I think, with our main character, Mary or Maricat, she kind of has this very like childlike voice because she's the narrator, but she's supposed to be 18. But she has this very like childlike immaturity and style of narration that really just adds to kind of the unsettling nature of this book, especially as we find out more about what actually happened. And I just ended up really enjoying it. I think there's a lot there that you don't like, that I would like to like think more about. I mean, I literally just finished it, and I feel like it's very rich in like subtext and whatever that maybe I didn't 100% catch, but I did actually really enjoy it by the end. It's very slow. I don't feel like it's very necessarily like super engaging, and I don't think it's gonna be for everyone. I think you have to be willing to just let like the atmosphere and the not necessarily the actual plot carry you along to enjoy this book, but I think it's very worthwhile if that's something that sounds interesting. And I just really ended up enjoying it because of just how it made me feel, honestly. I think the way that it builds atmosphere and the way that it ends up telling the story that it does is just really good. It just does it in a really good and well-constructed way. So I'm giving it 4 stars, and I'm very happy I ended up reading this, even if it was kind of spur of the moment and ended up going pretty well. And I haven't chosen what book I'm going to read next, so I will do that now, and knowing me, it'll be something that I have no idea what it's actually about, and so I'm not going to kind of check in when I choose it. I'll check in when I've chosen a book and read a little bit of it, so I can kind of give some more information on it rather than just saying I'm reading this book. And so I will check in then when I have something to say. Okay, so the book I've decided to read is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. This technically wasn't really on my TBR, it was just on my radar, and I saw that it was available from the library, and I've heard that it's a little darker, maybe a little creepy, a little Gothic-inspired, and after reading We've Always Lived in the Castle, I was kind of looking for more of that just because it was so short, and I just wanted a little more, and this is a normal sized book, so hopefully it'll give me the fix that I need. And I started already. I'm about like 50 pages in, so not too far, but there's already kind of a lot happening, and I'm definitely enjoying it right now. The writing is beautiful, but what is it actually about? I'll tell you. Basically, we have 2 perspectives, but one main one. It's a little confusing right now. The not main perspective, we only get like one chapter for every 4 chapters of the main one, and that's kind of in the past mostly, I think, so far. And the main character, the main driving plot of this is it takes place during, or like in the aftermath of the Mexican Revolution, and our protagonist has found herself kind of on the wrong side of this revolution, or not necessarily her, but her father. And so she and her mother lose basically everything, including her father, and they're forced to move in with members of her mother's family, even though they are wildly disliked by them because of their politics and her marrying the father. But everything kind of changes when the main character meets this other man. There's lots of names that are getting thrown around. I don't remember all of them, but it starts with an R, I can tell you that much. And she meets him and they decide to get married, mostly kind of for status and for safety for her part, and for him because there's mysterious goings on both with him, with his past, with his family, and so she's moving in to his house, the Hacienda, blah, blah, blah. That's where the title comes from. And it's very much giving like Rebecca energy, which is one of my favorite books, so I'm really liking that. It's very, very similar so far with like she moves into this grand house, but the house is creepy. People are kind of afraid of the house. There's like the head of the house is a little like weird and there's something going on. The guy that she marries had a past wife and it's kind of mysterious what happened to her. And so like all of that is very, very Rebecca. But also it just has a different tone, both because of the politics and the actual setting of it is obviously very different. And also it's not the same book, like there are definitely differences. And we also have this like other past perspective that I'm sure will build more onto what we're seeing now. And also I just like how it's more overtly scary, like Rebecca. A lot of what's scary about Rebecca is like how it's written and the tone. It kind of implies the creepiness of the house, but this, like, no, there are like weird things going on that are already kind of creepy, and I'm just enjoying that. So I don't really know what the actual plot will be. I assume it's going to be surrounding finding out what happened to his old wife. I'm sure there'll be lots of political intrigue, some family drama, as there usually is with this kind of story. I'm just excited to kind of see how it all pans out, because I'm invested already, and I'm only 50 pages in, so that's a good sign. So I will update when I have more thoughts to share, and I will see you then. Okay, I'm now nearing the end of the book, and my thoughts are kind of mixed. On the one hand, I still really enjoy the writing, I'm really enjoying the premise, and I just think the atmosphere is very well done. But there are like, I think I have like 2 main complaints so far, and one of them is like technically not fair, I'd say, because I haven't finished the book yet, but we'll kind of see as we go, and I'll actually explain that to you. But first of all, there's like a romance side plot that I do not think is necessary, and I don't really think is adding much, and it just feels kind of contrived and not that interesting to me, at least. And it's just not, I feel like every time it's like something starts there, I just kind of cringe and I'm like, what's going on? And that kind of leads into my second complaint, which is a lot of this book so far, at least like this middle portion, has felt very repetitive to me. It's very much like, oh, the main character is scared to be in the house because it's haunted, and oh, something bad happens, and oh, she goes and finds this other character, and they're like, oh, what are we gonna do? Oh no, something else bad happens. It's like, it feels very cyclical, and like there's like slight plot progressions, but in general, I just feel like I'm reading the same scenario over and over again. And what makes it like still not that bad is I do enjoy the writing, and I am enjoying the like general plot and atmosphere enough that it's not like ruining the experience completely for me, but it's just kind of not, it's making it so that this isn't really doing as much as I wanted it to do. And also, I guess I do have a third complaint. This is what I think is a little iffy and probably not fair. But if the like twist slash reveal is what they're kind of alluding to, or what I think it's going to be, then I'm going to be very disappointed, just because I feel like it's so predictable to the point where it just feels very boring if what I think happened. And if that's true, like, it's just going to be pretty disappointing, because I feel like this book has so much potential. Once again, just with how beautiful the writing is, how good the atmosphere, the premise is really just, there's a lot you could do with it. So if we just go the route I think they're going, I'm going to be incredibly disappointed. But I don't know, so I'm kind of mixed. I think it'll really depend on the ending. I think I'm hovering at like a 3-star right now, but if the ending like really shocks me or really does something incredible, it might move up to like a 3.54. And if the ending is terrible, it would have to be really bad to move it down. I think if I was to stop right now, a 3-star would be pretty on point. But just, it had so much potential at the start that I'm feeling a little like down about it. But at the same time, I was still able to, like, I'm not like bored, even though it is a little repetitive, and I still want to know what happened. I'm just a little skeptical of how it's going to go and if I'm going to end up actually really enjoying it. So I should be done very soon. I think I have like 70 more pages-ish. So I'm just going to go and read those, and I'll try to check in right after and just share my thoughts on the ending, and if any of my opinions have changed, and I will let you know. Unfortunately, nothing really changed for me in that last kind of chunk. I'm very disappointed by the ending, honestly, just because I feel like the reveal was just kind of weirdly handled, and I'm not sure that I 100% can get behind like the motivation for everything. I feel like it's a bit overblown. I feel like it only makes sense if you've like read the book, but I just personally feel like it just felt kind of extreme, and not fully rational or reasonable, that this character would do what she did. I don't know if that could have been explored more. I don't really know what I would have like preferred as an ending, but I don't really think that I liked it. And I also felt like the climax itself was kind of rushed. I think it took like 20 pages, 30 pages. It is probably more, but it really felt like no time between like the reveal and like the ending of the book, or like the ending of the actual action of the book. And I just wasn't a huge fan. I think like something that could have made this book a lot better for me was focusing on like the social commentary that it often referenced but didn't really delve that deep into. I thought that was a lot more interesting. I thought that was probably the most interesting aspect of the book. For example, like the head of the household, the husband of the main character, and focusing on like power and him, and like there's a little bit about that, but I wish kind of that had maybe been the focus, and in a way it is, but I feel like it could have even gone further, and that probably would have made it better for me. Also, I just feel like, once again, the romance subplot, that kind of drove us through the ending, and I feel like it was not fun to read, and I just did not care, and I wanted it to be over. And those like last, like after like the main climax was over, I was like basically skimming the rest because I just could not handle it. I just thought it was so random and just like thrown in there to have a romance. But all that being said, like I still can't say I didn't enjoy a lot of this book. As I said before, I really enjoyed the atmosphere, the premise, and I did enjoy the writing a lot. I think the writing is a really, really strong point for this. I feel like it didn't really pay off the way I wanted it to, and that's a little disappointing. So I think I'm gonna just stay at 3 stars. I don't really know how set I am in that rating, but for now I'll just say it's 3 stars, and that's gonna do it for that book. So I think that's also just gonna do it for the video, because I was planning probably to do like 3 books, but I feel like I've said a lot about these 2 books, We Have Always Lived in the Castle and the Hacienda, just because I feel like there was a lot to say. I had a lot of opinions, and I'm overall pretty satisfied with how this went. I feel like this is really confirmed for me that I want to read more books with like gothic or unsettling atmospheres. I feel like that was a really big draw for both of these books, even though I didn't love the Hacienda. I really liked the atmosphere and that aspect of it, and I really loved it in We Have Always Lived in the Castle as well. So definitely good with that. I know I said that this wasn't going to be like a themed reading vlog, and it technically wasn't, but I feel like this is also a good stopping point, because I just read 2 books that were kind of similar in like tone and kind of similar in like that gothic creepy vibe. So it just kind of makes sense as a reading vlog. We can pretend that I planned it that way, and that's gonna do it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, or subscribe if you want. I would really appreciate it. I try to post videos once a week. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, and I will see you in the next one.